Captain Sarah Chen stood in the center of the massive chamber on Nexus Prime. The room was so big that her voice would echo if she spoke too loud. Above her head, 12 giant screens showed the faces of the Galactic Council members. Each face belonged to a different alien species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Sarah wore her best uniform. The blue fabric had small medals on the chest that showed her years of service to humanity. She had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat. Today, she hoped her fighting days were behind her. She was here to ask the Council to accept humans as full members of the galactic community. The Council chamber was built to make visitors feel small. The ceiling stretched up so high that Sarah could barely see it. Strange lights floated in the air around her, casting weird shadows on the smooth metal walls. Everything was designed to remind people that the Council was powerful and ancient. Sarah looked up at the screens. The Zephyrian Chancellor had a face like a bird, with sharp yellow eyes and a beak that could probably cut through metal. Next to him was the Nexari representative, a being made of living crystal that sparkled with inner light. There were others too, the slug-like Garathi, the floating gas cloud ethereals, and 8 more species that had been in charge of the galaxy since before humans had even discovered fire. Honorable Council members, Sarah began. Her voice was steady and strong. I come before you today representing the United Earth Federation and all human colonies. We have been a spacefaring species for 500 years. We have established 37 colonies across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. We have made peaceful contact with 17 different species. We believe it is time for humanity to join the Galactic Council as full members. The Zephyrian Chancellor made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like metal scraping against stone. 500 years, he said. His voice came through the translation system as cold and mocking. Child species, you think 500 years makes you ready to sit with us? We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Some of us remember when your planet was nothing but rocks and primitive gases. Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice calm. Respectfully, Chancellor, we believe that wisdom comes from actions, not just age. In our 500 years, we have never started a war. We have helped other species solve problems. We have shared our technology freely. We have never enslaved another intelligent being. The crystalline Nexari spoke next. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Humans are emotional creatures, unstable, unpredictable. These traits make you dangerous to the peaceful order we have maintained. Our emotions make us compassionate, Sarah replied. They help us understand when something is wrong and needs to be fixed. When we see suffering, we want to help. When we see injustice, we want to make it right. Several council members made sounds of disgust. The slug-like Garathi representative spoke in a voice that sounded like thick liquid pouring. You speak of injustice as if you understand the complexities of governing a galaxy. You are like children who think they can tell adults how to run a household. Sarah had prepared for this. She activated a small device on her wrist and holographic displays appeared around her. The displays showed human achievements, cities built on dead worlds now green and full of life, space stations where dozens of different species worked together in peace, medical advances that had cured diseases affecting multiple alien races. These are not the achievements of children, Sarah said. These are the works of a species that cares about life and growth and cooperation. We have proven that we can be trusted with responsibility. The council members looked at the displays with what seemed like boredom. The Chancellor spoke again. You show us pretty pictures, but we see the truth. Humans expand too quickly. You breed too fast. You use up resources and then move to new worlds. You're like a virus spreading through the galaxy. Sarah's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she kept her voice level. We expand because we dream of a better future. We explore because we are curious about what lies beyond the next star. These are not crimes. These are the qualities that have helped us grow from a single world to a community of billions. Dreams, said the ethereal representative, its voice like whispers in the wind. Dreams lead to chaos. Order requires control. Control requires hierarchy. You humans reject hierarchy. You believe all beings are equal. This belief is dangerous to the stability we have created. Now Sarah understood. This was not really about whether humans were ready to join the council. This was about the council being afraid of what humans represented. They were afraid of change. They were afraid of losing control. You are right, Sarah said quietly. We do believe all intelligent beings have equal worth. We believe that no species has the right to rule over others just because they are older or stronger. We believe that cooperation works better than domination. The chamber fell silent. The council members looked at each other through their screens. Sarah could see them communicating in ways she could not understand. Lights flashed between some of them. Others made sounds outside the range of human hearing. Finally, the Chancellor spoke. The Galactic Council has reached a decision. Humanity is declared a threat to galactic stability. Your rapid expansion, your dangerous ideologies, and your refusal to accept proper authority make you unsuitable for membership in our community. Sarah felt cold dread in her stomach. What does that mean for humanity's future? It means, said the Nexari, that examples must be made. Other young species must understand what happens when proper respect is not shown to legitimate authority. The floor beneath Sarah's feet began to glow. She recognized the energy pattern from her military training. It was a disintegration field, the same kind of weapon used in ship-to-ship combat. But this one was designed to work on living beings. Wait, Sarah said, backing away. But there was nowhere to go. The entire floor was beginning to light up. You cannot do this. I came here under diplomatic protection. I came here in good faith. Diplomatic protection, the Chancellor said, is a privilege we grant to equals. You have just admitted that you consider yourself our equal. This is an insult that requires correction. The energy field grew brighter. Sarah could feel it starting to pull at her atoms. She looked up at the screens, at the faces of beings who had decided to murder her simply for believing that all life had value. You think this will frighten humanity into submission? She said. Her voice was getting weaker as the disintegration field affected her vocal cords. You think killing me will make my people bow down to you? We think, said the Garathi, that dead humans serve as better examples than living ones. Sarah felt her strength leaving her. The field was tearing her apart at the molecular level, but she managed to activate one last function on her wrist device. She opened a communication channel that would broadcast her final words across every human colony and every human ship in the galaxy. My name is Captain Sarah Chen, she said. Each word was a struggle now. I came here seeking peace and partnership. Instead, I found tyrants who believe that might makes right. They think that by killing me, they will break humanity's spirit. The energy field was almost at full power now. Sarah could see through her own hands as her body began to fade. They are wrong, she continued. Humanity does not break. We do not bow to bullies. We do not accept that some beings are worth more than others just because they are old or powerful. My death will not be the end of human dreams. It will be the beginning of something much bigger. The last thing Sarah saw was the Chancellor's face on the screen. The bird-like alien was smiling, showing sharp teeth. He thought he had won. You have no idea, Sarah whispered with her last breath, what you have just unleashed. The disintegration field completed its work. Where Captain Sarah Chen had stood, there was now only empty air and the fading glow of alien weapons. The council members congratulated each other on handling the human problem so efficiently. None of them noticed the small device that had fallen from Sarah's wrist before she died. None of them realized that every word spoken in the chamber had been recorded and transmitted. None of them understood that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology. It was their absolute refusal to accept that any being had the right to decide who lived and who died, based on nothing more than power. In 37 human colonies across the galaxy, Sarah's final message was received. In command centers and government buildings, in homes and schools and workplaces, humans heard their representatives' last words. And in that moment, something changed in the human heart. Something that the Galactic Council, for all their age and wisdom, had never understood and never would. The galaxy was about to learn what humans did when someone they loved was murdered for standing up for what was right. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the command center of the Luna Defense Station, watching the recording for the 4th time. Each time he saw Sarah Chen disappear in that terrible light, his hands gripped the metal railing harder. The metal was starting to bend under his fingers. Around him, the command center was completely silent. Officers and technicians sat at their stations staring at screens that showed the same message being broadcast across every human world. Webb had served with Sarah for 15 years. She had saved his life twice during the Kepler border conflicts. She had been the best soldier he had ever known, and an even better person. Now she was dead, murdered by aliens who thought humans should bow down and be grateful for scraps. Sir, said Commander Elena Vasquez, walking up behind him. Her voice was carefully controlled, but Webb could hear the rage underneath. "We're getting reports from all colonies." The message reached everyone. Webb nodded slowly. He turned away from the screen and looked at the faces of his people. These were military officers who had spent their careers preparing for war. But they had always hoped it would never come. They had believed that reason and diplomacy could solve any problem. That hope had died with Sarah Chen. "What are the civilian governments saying?" Webb asked. "President Martinez is calling for an emergency session of the Federation Council," Vasquez replied. "The colonial governors are demanding immediate action." "And, sir," she paused, "we're getting volunteer lists from every world. Millions of people wanting to enlist in the military." Webb was not surprised. Humans had a particular way of responding to injustice that other species seemed to find confusing. When humans were pushed, they did not just push back. They came together. They united in ways that made them stronger than the sum of their parts. "Elena," Webb said quietly, "activate Protocol 7. Vasquez went completely still. Protocol 7 was something they had hoped never to use. It was humanity's deepest secret, the thing they had hidden from every alien species they had ever met. "Sir, are you certain?" she asked. "They killed Sarah for asking to be treated as equals," Webb replied. "They made it clear that they see us as animals to be controlled or destroyed." Protocol 7 was designed for exactly this situation. Vasquez nodded and walked to a communication panel that had been sealed with multiple locks and biometric scanners. She placed her hand on the scanner and spoke her authorization code. Webb did the same. Together, they opened the channel that would change everything. Across human space, in secret facilities hidden in asteroid belts and on the dark sides of moons, machines began to wake up. For 500 years, humanity had been preparing for the possibility that they might meet aliens who wanted to destroy them, not because humans were paranoid, but because they had learned from their own history that bullies only understood one language. On Mars, in a facility buried 2 kilometers under the polar ice cap, massive fusion reactors came online. The reactors powered manufacturing systems that began building ships using designs that had never been tested. Ships that used technology the Galactic Council did not know existed. In the asteroid belt around Alpha Centauri, robot miners stopped collecting metals for colonial construction. Instead, they began building weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Weapons that had been designed by humans who understood that sometimes peace had to be fought for. On Earth's moon, in the deepest crater on the far side where no alien satellites could see, the hangar doors opened on fighters that had been waiting for 200 years. Fighters flown by pilots who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. But the real secret was not the hidden weapons or the secret bases. The real secret was something the Galactic Council could never have imagined. Humans had not spent 500 years just exploring and building colonies. They had spent those centuries studying every alien species they met, learning their weaknesses, understanding their psychology, preparing for the day when their peaceful intentions might not be enough. Webb walked to the main communication array. He opened a channel that would reach every human world, every human ship, every human station in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb, speaking for the United Earth Federation Military Command," he began. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that made every human listening stand a little straighter. 37 minutes ago, Captain Sarah Chen was murdered by the Galactic Council for the crime of believing that all intelligent beings deserve respect and freedom. He paused, letting that sink in. Across human space, people stopped what they were doing and listened. "The Council believes that by killing one of us, they have shown the rest of us our place. They believe that humans will now submit to their authority out of fear. They believe that we will accept that some beings are born to rule and others are born to serve." Webb's voice grew harder. "They are wrong." In hidden bases across the galaxy, weapons systems that had been sleeping for centuries began their startup sequences. Ships that no alien had ever seen began moving out of concealment. Soldiers who had trained for a war against tyranny began checking their equipment. "The Galactic Council has existed for 10,000 years, Webb continued. "In all that time, they have never faced an enemy like humanity. They have never fought against people who believe that freedom is worth dying for. They have never struggled against beings who refuse to accept that might makes right. On the planet New Geneva, in a research facility hidden inside a mountain, Dr. Elena Vasquez's twin sister Carmen began unsealing projects that had been classified beyond top secret. Projects that had been deemed too dangerous to use unless humanity faced extinction. Technologies that could make human ships invisible to any sensor the Council possessed. Weapons that could turn the Council's own defensive systems against them. Computer viruses that had been designed to infiltrate alien networks and learn everything about Council military capabilities. Sarah Chen died believing that cooperation was better than conquest, Webb said. She died hoping that reason could triumph over fear. She died trying to build a better galaxy for all thinking beings. The Admiral's voice grew quiet, but somehow that made it more frightening. The Council has chosen to answer her hope with murder. They have decided that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to exist as free beings. They have made their choice. Across the galaxy, on 37 human worlds, billions of people listen to their military leaders' words. In homes and offices, in schools and factories, humans heard the message that would define their species for generations to come. Now we make ours, Webb said. The communication channel went silent, but across human space, other communications began. Military channels came alive with orders and acknowledgments. Secret facilities reported ready status. Hidden fleets began moving toward positions that had been planned for centuries. The Galactic Council had made a fundamental error. They had assumed that because humans were young and emotional, they were also foolish and unprepared. They had thought that killing one human leader would frighten the rest into submission. Instead, they had just provided humanity with something they had never had before: moral justification for total war. Dr. Carmen Vasquez looked at the weapon designs on her screen. These were devices that could crack planets, technologies that could make stars go nova, weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. They had been created by humans who understood that sometimes the only way to preserve life was to threaten death on an unimaginable scale. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Webb. "Sir, Project Prometheus is ready for activation." "Understood," Webb replied. "Begin Phase 1. Across the galaxy, human ships began moving, not the exploration vessels and cargo haulers that aliens had grown used to seeing. These were warships that had been hidden for centuries, ships that carried weapons designed to fight enemies who had ruled the galaxy since before humans had discovered agriculture. The Council had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power and submission. Instead, they were about to learn what happened when humans decided that a lesson needed to be taught in return. And the first lesson would be simple: never threaten the family of someone who has spent 500 years preparing for the possibility that they might need to burn down the galaxy to protect the people they love. 3 days after Sarah Chen's murder, the Galactic Council received their first hint that they had made a terrible mistake. The Council's trade convoy from the Rigel sector simply vanished. One moment, 50 massive cargo ships were traveling through normal space toward the Nexus system. The next moment, they were gone. No wreckage, no distress signals, no trace that they had ever existed. Chancellor Vexhai of the Zephyrians stared at the report in his private chambers. The convoy had been protected by 12 Council warships, vessels that had been designed to fight wars against entire civilizations. Those ships were gone too. How is this possible? He asked his military advisor, a scarred veteran named Commander Theclon. "We do not know, Chancellor," the commander replied. His voice carried the confusion that was spreading through Council military ranks. There were no enemy ships detected. Our sensors showed normal space conditions right up until the moment everything disappeared. The Chancellor's sharp beak clicked with agitation. "Ships do not simply vanish, Commander. Find out what happened to them." But before Theclon could respond, another report arrived. A Council mining operation in the Vega system had gone silent. The space station there, along with its 10,000 workers and 30 defending ships, had ceased all communication 6 hours ago. Then came more reports. A Council patrol fleet in the Centauri region had detected strange energy signatures, then gone silent. A diplomatic convoy traveling to the Garathi homeworld had missed its scheduled check-in. 3 separate research facilities had stopped responding to communication attempts. The pattern was becoming clear, and it terrified the Council in ways they had not experienced for thousands of years. Something was systematically dismantling the infrastructure that held their empire together, but the attackers remained invisible. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, a ship that officially did not exist. Around him, officers monitored displays that showed the real-time location of every Council asset within 50 light-years. The information came from spy satellites that had been deployed across the galaxy over the past 2 centuries, disguised as harmless research probes. "Admiral," said Captain Torres from the tactical station, "Fleet Group 7 reports successful completion of Operation Nightfall. The Rigel convoy has been eliminated. No survivors," Webb nodded. "And the mining station?" "Fleet Group 3 finished that 2 hours ago. The Vega facility is gone." Webb looked at the main display, which showed a map of the galaxy with red dots marking Council positions and blue dots marking human forces. The blue dots were moving in patterns that would seem random to anyone watching, but Webb could see the design. His fleets were cutting the Council off from their resources, piece by piece. "Sir," said Commander Park from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Council. They're demanding to know who is attacking their forces." Webb smiled grimly. "Ignore it. Let them wonder." The secret of human success was not their weapons, though those were indeed formidable. The secret was that humans had spent 500 years learning to think like their enemies. They had studied every Council species, learned their psychology, understood their fears. The Council ruled through overwhelming force and the fear of that force. They had never faced an enemy who could strike without being seen, who could appear anywhere without warning, who could destroy their assets and vanish without a trace. It was driving them to panic. On the planet Cathera Prime, in the deep ocean cities where the Council forced an aquatic species to mine rare crystals, something unexpected was happening. Human submarines rose from the deepest trenches, places where Council sensors could not detect them. The submarines carried human Marines who had been specially trained to fight in underwater environments. Lieutenant Sarah Kim led her squad through the coral forests that surrounded the mining city. Her suit allowed her to breathe underwater and communicate with her team, but more importantly, it let her speak directly to the Kythera workers. "We are humans," she said to a group of Kythera who had stopped working to stare at the strange visitors. "We have come to free you from the Council." The Kythera were graceful beings who looked like a cross between dolphins and octopi. They had intelligence and culture, but the Council had enslaved them because they could work in environments that other species found impossible. One of the Kythera, an elderly being with scars from decades of forced labor, swam closer to Kim. "Free us? No one can stand against the Council. They have ruled for 10,000 years. The Council just murdered one of our people for asking to be treated as equals," Kim replied. "They think that makes them powerful. We think that makes them murderers who need to be stopped." Kim activated a device on her belt. Around the mining city, human charges began destroying the equipment that the Council used to extract crystals from the ocean floor. The explosions were carefully controlled to destroy machines without harming workers. "You can come with us," Kim told the Kythera, "or you can stay here and be free. But you will never be slaves again." The same scene was playing out across the galaxy. On the desert world of Nex 7, human soldiers freed the insectoid Vexi who had been forced to work in crystal mines. On the gas giant Aurelius, human ships evacuated the ethereal prisoners, who had been trapped in energy collection facilities, but it was on the prison world of Thanatos that humanity made its most important statement. The planet Thanatos was where the Council sent beings who had committed the crime of believing in freedom. Political prisoners, rebel leaders, philosophers who taught that all thinking beings had equal worth. For 5,000 years, Thanatos had been a symbol of what happened to those who opposed Council rule. Admiral Webb personally led the assault on Thanatos. His fleet appeared out of quantum tunnels that bypassed all Council detection systems. The tunnels were humanity's greatest secret. Technology that allowed instantaneous travel without using the hyperspace gates that the Council controlled. The prison guards on Thanatos were some of the Council's most brutal enforcers. They had grown lazy over the centuries, confident that no one could reach the isolated world. They had not prepared for human Marines who could appear anywhere without warning. The battle was short and decisive. Human soldiers moved through the prison complexes like ghosts, using technology that made them invisible to most sensors. They freed thousands of prisoners from dozens of different species, beings who had given up hope of ever seeing freedom again. As the freed prisoners boarded human transport ships, Webb stood in the main prison complex. He activated a communication array that would broadcast his message across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the human fleet," he said. "To all beings in this galaxy who have suffered under Council rule, know this. Humanity stands with you. We will not stop until every prison is opened, every slave is freed, and every tyrant is brought to justice." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "To the Galactic Council, you wanted to teach us about power. Consider this your first lesson. You rule through fear and oppression. We fight for freedom and justice. Let us see which proves stronger." The message reached every world in the galaxy. On Council homeworlds, the ruling classes watched in horror as their prison system collapsed. On enslaved worlds, oppressed beings looked up at the stars and dared to hope for the first time in generations. But the most important audience was the Council itself. In their ancient chambers on Nexus Prime, the 12 rulers of the galaxy realized that they faced something they had never encountered before. An enemy who could not be intimidated, could not be bribed, and could not be reasoned with. An enemy who had spent centuries preparing for this war, and who had already turned the galaxy's oppressed masses into allies. Chancellor Vexhai stared at the reports flooding in from across Council space. Dozens of facilities destroyed, hundreds of ships missing, thousands of prisoners freed, and still no one had actually seen the human fleet. "How many ships do they have?" he asked his military commander. "We do not know," Teclon replied. "Our intelligence suggested they had perhaps 50 warships scattered across their colonies. But the attack patterns suggest hundreds of vessels operating in coordinated groups." The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" "I am saying, sir, that either humans have been hiding the true size of their military, or they have technology that makes their ships far more effective than we believed possible." As if to emphasize the point, another report arrived. A Council fleet guarding the approach to the Garathi homeworld had detected strange energy signatures. When they moved to investigate, they had found empty space. But 6 hours later, the fleet itself had vanished. The Council was beginning to understand a terrible truth. They had not just murdered a diplomat. They had started a war with an enemy who had been preparing for this conflict for 500 years. An enemy who had learned to fight in ways the Council had never imagined. The Galactic Council's emergency session was the first time in 3,000 years that all 12 species had met in person, instead of through communication screens. The great chamber on Nexus Prime felt smaller with the massive alien beings present, their fear filling the air like a toxic gas. Chancellor Vexhai looked around the circular table at his fellow rulers. The crystalline Nexari representative was flickering with nervous energy. The slug-like Garathi had retreated partially into its shell. Even the gas cloud ethereals seemed more solid than usual, as if their panic was making them condense. "In 2 weeks, Vexhai began. These humans have destroyed 40% of our mining operations, eliminated 60% of our patrol fleets, and freed over 1 million prisoners from our correctional facilities. Our trade routes are in chaos. Our military commanders are reporting equipment failures across the fleet." The Nexari spoke with a voice like breaking glass. "Equipment failures? Our ships use technology that has worked perfectly for millennia." "That is the problem," said Commander Teclon, addressing the Council for the first time. His scarred face showed the exhaustion of an officer who had not slept in days. "Our investigation suggests that human computer viruses have infiltrated our networks. Our own systems are being turned against us." The fat Garathi made us sound like boiling mud. "Impossible. Our security systems were designed by the greatest minds of 12 civilizations." "Yes," Teclon replied grimly, "but they were designed 10,000 years ago. Humans have been studying our technology for 5 centuries. They have found weaknesses that we never knew existed." As if to prove his point, the lights in the chamber flickered. The Council members looked around nervously. Their most secure facility was experiencing technical difficulties during their most important meeting in millennia. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Carmen Vasquez watched her screens with satisfaction. Her computer viruses were spreading through Council networks faster than she had dared hope. The aliens had made a crucial mistake. They had built their entire civilization on interconnected systems that had never been seriously tested against. "Attack, Carmen," came Admiral Webb's voice. Through her communicator. "How long until we can activate Project Prometheus?" 12 hours, she replied. "The viruses need that long to fully map their defense networks. Once we have complete access to their systems, we can turn their own weapons against them." Webb nodded, though she could not see him. Project Prometheus was humanity's final card, the weapon they had hoped never to use. It was designed not just to defeat the Council, but to make sure they could never threaten anyone again. But first, they had one more demonstration to make. The Council's largest military base was on the moon of Titan VII, orbiting a gas giant in the Regulus system. The base contained 50,000 soldiers and 500 warships. It was supposed to be impregnable, protected by energy shields that could stop planetary bombardments, and sensor arrays that could detect approaching enemies from light years away. None of that helped when the enemy was already inside. Captain Maria Santos led her strike team through the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the base. Her soldiers had been on Titan VII for 3 months, disguised as maintenance workers and supply technicians. The Council had never suspected that humans could infiltrate their most secure facilities. Team leaders, report status, Santos whispered into her communication device. Team Alpha in position. At the power core, came the first reply. Team Beta ready, at the command center, said another voice. Team Gamma has control of the weapon systems, reported a third. Santos smiled. The Council thought they were fighting a conventional war against an external enemy. They had never considered the possibility that humans might have been preparing for this conflict from within their own territory. Execute, Santos ordered. Across the base, human saboteurs activated devices that had been carefully placed over months of preparation. The energy shields flickered and died. The communication arrays went silent. The weapons systems turned on the base's own defenders. In the command center, alien officers stared in horror as their own defense turrets began firing on Council ships. The base that was supposed to protect them had become a weapon aimed at their hearts. Santos and her team fought their way to the central command room, where the base commander was frantically trying to regain control of his systems. The alien looked up as human soldiers burst through the doors, their weapons trained on him. Surrender, Santos said simply. Your war is lost. The commander, a proud Zephyrian warrior, reached for his sidearm. Santos put 3 rounds in his chest before he could draw it. Around the base, other commanders were making the same choice and meeting the same fate. Within 6 hours, the largest Council military installation in the galaxy was under human control. Santos stood in the command center, looking at displays that showed the locations of Council fleets across the sector. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Webb. Titan VII is secure, Admiral. We have full access to their tactical database. Excellent work, Captain, Webb replied. Begin Phase 2 of Prometheus. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council was receiving reports of the Titan VII disaster. The magnitude of the human infiltration was becoming clear. If humans could take their most secure base from within, nowhere was safe. How did they get inside? Demanded the ethereal representative. We believe, said Theclon reluctantly, that they have been infiltrating our facilities for years, possibly decades. Our background checks focused on political loyalty, not species verification. Humans look similar enough to several Council species that they could pass casual inspection. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. If humans had been living among them for years, learning their secrets, studying their weaknesses, how many of them are there? Whispered the Nexari. Before anyone could answer, the chamber's main display activated. Admiral Webb's face appeared on the screen, larger than life. Behind him, the Council could see what was clearly the command center of Titan VII. Honorable Council members, Webb said, his voice carrying a mockery that made the title sound like an insult. I thought you should know that your largest military base is now under human control, along with its database containing the locations and security codes for every Council installation in this sector. The Council members stared at the screen in horror. The human had just announced that he knew where all their secret bases were located. But that is not why I am contacting you, Webb continued. I am here to make you an offer. Surrender now and we will allow you to live. Continue this war and we will demonstrate why humans have spent 500 years preparing for this moment. Chancellor Vex High found his voice. You speak of surrender as if you have already won. You have destroyed some of our assets, but the Council controls 1,000 worlds and 10 million ships. You are one small species fighting the greatest empire in galactic history. Webb smiled, and the expression was colder than space itself. Chancellor, you are about to learn the difference between ruling through fear and fighting for justice. Your subjects obey you because they are afraid. Our allies fight beside us because they believe in what we are doing. As if summoned by his words, the display split to show scenes from across the galaxy. Kathura naval forces attacking council ships in the depths of their ocean worlds. HFY rebellion groups destroying mining equipment and freeing their enslaved brothers. Ethereal freedom fighters disrupting energy collection facilities. You see, Webb continued, we did not just free your prisoners. We armed them. We trained them. We gave them hope. Half of your empire is now in open revolt. The truth was devastating. The council had ruled for so long through fear and oppression that they had created millions of enemies. Humans had simply given those enemies the tools and inspiration they needed to fight back. This is your last chance, Webb said. Surrender now and face justice for your crimes. Refuse and face the consequences of 10,000 years of tyranny coming home to roost. Chancellor HFY stood, his bird-like form trembling with rage. Never. The Council has ruled this galaxy since before your species discovered fire. We will not surrender to children who think emotion is stronger than order. Webb nodded as if he had expected this answer. Very well. Dr. Vasquez, activate Project Prometheus. The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. They had just refused humanity's final offer, but none of them understood what they had chosen instead. In hidden facilities across human space, weapons that had been built over centuries began their final activation sequences. These were not conventional weapons. They were tools designed to end the war quickly and completely, no matter what the cost. The Council was about to learn why humans had been willing to spend 500 years preparing for a war they hoped would never come. They were about to discover what happened when someone pushed humanity too far. Project Prometheus began at exactly Ori00's Galactic Standard Time. Dr. Carmen Vasquez sat in the deepest bunker on Earth, her fingers hovering over controls that would change the galaxy forever. Around her, technicians monitored displays showing the status of weapon systems hidden across 100 star systems. These were devices that humanity had built in secret, hoping never to use them. All stations report ready, said her assistant. Prometheus network is fully online. Carmen took a deep breath. In 10 minutes, the Council would discover what humans had been building while they thought they were the only ones with planet-killing weapons. Initiate countdown, she ordered. Across the galaxy, in the Rigel system where the Council maintained their largest shipyard, something impossible happened. The system star began to change. Solar flares erupted from its surface in patterns that defied natural physics. The flares were not random or they were controlled, directed, aimed at specific targets. The Council fleet stationed at Rigel watched in horror as streams of stellar plasma struck their ships. Vessels that had been designed to survive supernovas melted like ice in a furnace. Within minutes, 300 Council warships were reduced to glowing metal clouds, but the star was not finished. The flares grew larger, more focused. They reached out toward the shipyard itself, a massive construction facility that had been building Council fleets for 5,000 years. The installation had shields that could protect it from any conventional weapon. They could not protect it from the fury of a sun. The shipyard vaporized in seconds. Along with it died the technical knowledge to build the Council's most advanced warships. Knowledge that had taken millennia to develop was erased in moments. On Nexus Prime, the Council emergency session descended into chaos as reports flooded in. The Rigel disaster was not an isolated incident. Across their empire, stars were going mad. How are they doing this? Screamed the Nexari representative, its crystal form flickering with panic. Commander Thecalon stared at the reports with the expression of someone watching his own execution. The humans have found a way to control stellar activity. They are using our own suns as weapons against us. The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the Council could imagine. For 2 centuries, humans had been secretly placing devices in the cores of stars throughout Council space. The devices were tiny, barely larger than a grain of sand, but they contained technology that could trigger controlled stellar eruptions. The Council had never detected them because they had never imagined that anyone would be insane enough to weaponize stars themselves. Chancellor HFY grabbed Thecalon by the shoulders, his sharp claws digging into the commander's armor. Can we stop them? I do not know, Thecalon replied. We do not even understand how they are doing it. Another report arrived. The Vega system, where the Council maintained their primary research facilities, was under attack by its own star. Solar flares were systematically destroying every artificial structure in the system, while leaving the planets themselves untouched. Then came more reports. The Centauri cluster, the Sirius complex, the Arcturus naval base. One by one, the stars themselves were turning against the Council. But Admiral Webb was not finished with his demonstration. On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Webb watched displays showing the destruction of Council installations across a dozen star systems. Each facility destroyed was a piece of the infrastructure that had allowed the Council to rule through fear for 10,000 years. "Admiral," said Captain Torres, "all primary targets have been eliminated. Prometheus is performing exactly as designed." Webb nodded grimly. Project Prometheus had been humanity's ultimate contingency plan, designed for the possibility that they might face an enemy so powerful that conventional weapons would be useless. The plan was simple in concept but staggering in execution. Turn the galaxy's own stars into weapons. Open a channel to all Council facilities, Webb ordered. Across Council space, every communication device activated simultaneously. Admiral Webb's face appeared on screens in government buildings, military bases, and private homes on 1,000 worlds. "People of the Galactic Council," he began, "you have seen what happens when humanity is forced to war. Your leaders chose to murder our representative rather than treat us as equals. They chose to rule through fear rather than govern through consent. They chose to preserve their power rather than embrace justice." On Nexus Prime, the Council members watched in stunned silence as their enemy addressed their people directly. "The war is over," Webb continued. "Your military has been destroyed. Your infrastructure lies in ruins. Your sons themselves have turned against you. But humanity does not seek conquest. We seek justice." Webb paused, letting his words sink in across a galaxy that had just watched its most powerful empire crumble in hours. "To the people of the Council worlds, you are not our enemies. You are fellow beings who deserve freedom and dignity. Your leaders told you that humans were dangerous because we believe all thinking beings have equal worth. They were right to fear that idea because it means their rule is over." In the Council chamber, Chancellor Vexhai made one last desperate attempt to maintain control. He activated the chamber's emergency weapons system, intending to destroy the human ships that must be nearby. Nothing happened. The weapon systems had been infected by human computer viruses, just like everything else in Council space. "To the former rulers of the Galactic Council," Webb said, his voice growing harder, "you have a choice. Surrender now and face trial for your crimes, or continue to resist and face the consequences." The Chancellor's pride would not let him surrender. "Never," he screamed at the screen. "We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We will not bow to upstart primitives." Webb sighed as if he had expected this response. "Very well. Dr. Vasquez, execute Protocol Omega." On Nexus Prime, the planet star began to behave strangely. Solar flares erupted from its surface, but instead of dissipating into space, they began to converge on a single point. The Council's homeworld was about to experience what their victims had suffered for millennia. But just as the stellar fire was about to strike, it stopped. The flares hung in space like frozen lightning, close enough to Nexus Prime that everyone on the planet could see them through their atmosphere. "That," Webb said quietly, "is what we could do to you. But we will not, because unlike you, we do not kill the defenseless even when they are our enemies." The demonstration had its intended effect. Across the chamber, Council members were collapsing in their seats, overwhelmed by the realization that they were completely helpless. "The war is over," Webb repeated. "Your fleets are destroyed. Your weapons are useless. Your subjects are in revolt. You can choose to die as tyrants or live to see the better galaxy that will be built on the ruins of your empire." One by one, the Council members began to surrender. The crystalline Nexari was the first, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. We yield to human authority," the others followed. The proud Garathi, the ancient Ethereals, even the warrior Zephyrians. Each species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia admitted defeat to humans who had been exploring space for only 5 centuries. Only Chancellor Vexhai remained defiant. "I will never surrender to animals who think emotion is stronger than order." Admiral Webb appeared on the chamber's main screen, looking directly at the Chancellor. "Then you will be the only casualty of this war who dies for pride instead of principle." The stellar flares, that had been held in check suddenly, converged on a single point in space, the exact location where the Chancellor's personal spacecraft was docked. The ship and the Chancellor's escape route vanished in a flash of solar fire. Vexhai stared at the empty space where his ship had been, finally understanding that his power was truly gone. The galaxy has a new future, Webb announced to the watching trillions. One where no species rules over others, one where justice matters more than power, one where all thinking beings can live in freedom and dignity. He paused, looking directly into the camera. This is the future that Captain Sarah Chen died for. This is the galaxy she believed was possible. We have built it with fire and blood, but now we will maintain it with wisdom and compassion. 1 year later, Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the same chamber where Sarah Chen had died. The room looked very different now. Instead of 12 screens showing alien tyrants, there were dozens of representatives from species across the galaxy, working together to solve problems through cooperation instead of force. The new Galactic Federation had its headquarters on Nexus Prime, but its purpose was completely different from the old Council. Instead of ruling through fear, it operated through consent. Instead of maintaining order through oppression, it preserved peace through justice. Webb looked at the memorial plaque that had been installed where Sarah had died. It bore her name and a simple inscription. She died believing that all beings could live together in peace. We lived to prove she was right. A young aide approached him carrying reports from across the galaxy. Former slave species were building their own civilizations. Joint research projects were unlocking new technologies. Exploration fleets were mapping regions of space that had been forbidden under Council rule. Sir, the aide said, we have a request from the Andromeda colony. They want to name their new city after Captain Chen.